It's been called the toughest law in America. So tough that 4 U.S. Supreme Court justices have questioned whether it violates the ban on cruel and unusual punishment. So tough that a lot of prosecutors and judges refuse to enforce it. We're talking about California's version of the 3 strikes law. It says if a criminal commits a second felony and it's on California's list of serious crimes, the sentence is automatically doubled. Commit a 3rd felony, and the sentence is a mandatory 25 years to life, no matter what the crime, even stealing a bicycle. Just ask the thief, Stephen Bell, a 36-year-old tree trimmer from Citrus Heights, California, who is awaiting sentencing and facing punishment worthy of a murderer.
How much time are you looking at?
35, 25, 35 to life.
For stealing a $300 bicycle?
The DA says so, yes.
Bell's problem is his past. He has a history of drug and alcohol abuse and a rap sheet filled with bungled crimes and misdemeanors, including 2 previous convictions for burglary in Nevada. The last one was 10 years ago for stealing a chauffeur's coat and gloves from a garage on New Year's Eve. He said he was drunk and cold.
Did you know about the 3 strikes law?
I've heard of the 3 strikes law. I didn't know when I made it to this jail that 3 strikes applied to me, strictly, not whatsoever. I thought this 3-strike law constituted to violent people, hurting, killing, raping, not taking a bicycle.
And so did most Californians when they overwhelmingly approved a ballot initiative on the 3 strikes law in November of 1994. The main reason was the brutal murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas, who was taken from her home, raped, and strangled to death by a drifter with a long and violent criminal record. Californians decided they had had enough. And today, the man responsible for America's toughest law is making no apologies.
If you're not prepared to lock up criminals, you're not prepared to stop crime. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Mike Reynolds is not an elected official. He's not even a lawyer. He's a wedding photographer with a very personal stake in all of this. His 18-year-old daughter, Kimber, was also murdered by 2 ex-convicts who at the time were out on parole. He wanted to make sure that something like that never happened again. So he authored the bill outside the legislative process and collected the signatures to get it on the ballot.
What 3 strikes is able to do is go back and look at this person's career in its entirety, and if they deem it necessary, to remove him from society. Now, there's no law that's perfect, but I honestly believe 3 strikes comes closer to being perfect than any other law written.
But perfect is in the eye of the beholder. Police officers, prison officials, and legal experts have begun to question whether California's version of the law goes too far. And many judges and prosecutors who are legally bound to enforce the law are getting around it by ignoring a defendant's previous strikes.
Usually, criminal laws bark louder than they bite. The 3 strikes law that California passed bites louder than it barks.
Franklin Zimmering, a professor of law at the University of California, Berkeley, doesn't believe laws should be written by vengeful fathers. He says the law was passed in the heat of passion and that no one bothered to read the fine print, which gave this homeless man a 3rd strike and 25 years to life for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. And this man, the same sentence for stealing a slice of pepperoni pizza.
How can stealing a pizza be a felony?
There is a provision in California law that says that if you have a prior conviction for any theft felony, any theft, even a petty theft that is normally a misdemeanor.
Even a pizza?
Even a pizza, anything of value then is escalated by reason of your previous record to felony status.
In legal parlance, it's called petty with a prior, which means that an ex-con with 2 strikes could get life for committing what would normally be a misdemeanor. Professor Zimmering says the law is arbitrary, unfair, and silly.
Why silly?
Silly because it violates the first principle of penal proportionality, which is that you treat more serious crimes more seriously. And so in a sense, it doesn't make any difference whether you are committing second-degree murder or burglary or petty theft or possession of marijuana.
He claims the bicycle thief and the pizza thief with 2 priors are not unusual examples, but representative of the kinds of people being locked away in the California prison system for 25 years to life at a cost of $500,000 each. The law is already responsible for a quarter of the state's prison population.
California now has more than 50,000 prison inmates sentenced under the 3 strikes law, and more than half of them are serving time for non-violent crimes, things like drug possession, theft, and forgery. Here at Folsom Prison, some inmates got their 3rd strike for offenses so petty that under ordinary circumstances, they wouldn't even have been prosecuted. What was your last conviction, and how long are you all here for?
I'm here for my 3rd strike for possession of rock cocaine, 5 rocks, and I have 25 years to life.
I got 25 to life for shoplifting a pair of Levi's.
And I was convicted of petty theft of AA batteries, and I'm serving 25 years to life.
2 AA batteries?
Yes, sir.
And you got life for stealing a pair of blue jeans?
Yes, sir. Shoplifting, no use of force or violence, nothing.
None of these men is what you would call a solid citizen. They all have previous convictions for serious crimes, even though none of them has a history of violence. It's mostly theft, burglary, and drugs. But 3 Strikes author Mike Reynolds says it doesn't bother him a bit that most of the people being locked up under his law committed nonviolent crimes.
The people that murdered my daughter, it started as a simple purse snatching. Would you lock up a person for life over a purse snatching? Well, it turned violent just like that. These guys pulled out a .357 Magnum, put it in her ear, and pulled the trigger, and never gave a New York minute about it.
Since the law was passed, crime has dropped 34%. While there's no evidence the 2 are connected, crime's down everywhere, 3 Strikes has become an article of faith among California politicians who have to run for office, including California's Democratic Governor, Gray Davis.
I do believe it's appropriate for society to have a law saying that habitual criminals should be sent away for a long period of time. And that if all you're doing is committing crime, you're no more than a parasite.
We looked at a study the other day that said the average rapist in California serves a term of about 5.5 years. Yet you've got a bicycle thief, or in some cases, people who had their 3rd strike be stealing cookies or pizza, getting 25 to life.
Well, in this pizza case, this fellow
Tell me
had
about the pizza case.
5 serious felony offenses before he stole pizza. And let me ask you this, do you want to make a case for people stealing pizza?
No. In my mind, I offer an opinion that 25 years to life is a little stiff.
But you don't get it for stealing pizza. You get it for the accumulated offenses that occurred before you stole pizza.
But if he didn't steal the pizza, he'd still be out on the street.
And if he didn't commit another crime, he wouldn't go back to prison. That's the point. The point is, at some point, reform yourself, shape up, and be a good citizen.
I have never hurt anybody physically, and I am grieved because of my past record, but it's there. It haunts me. It's haunting me now.
Which brings us back to Stephen Bell, whose biggest mistake, aside from stealing the bicycle, was stealing it from a garage in Placer County. If he'd stolen it from a garage in San Francisco, he probably wouldn't be facing a sentence of 25 years to life. In San Francisco, which has had one of the biggest drops in crime in California, prosecutors and judges rarely invoke the 3 Strikes law. Unfortunately for Bell, he ended up with Placer County prosecutor Stephen Dragland.
You think Stephen Bell is a serious or dangerous felon?
It's not what I think. It's what the law says about his status.
You think that the punishment fits the crime in this case? Stealing a bicycle? Life for stealing a bicycle?
Well, that's an erroneous premise. The defendant was not convicted of anything that's remotely close to stealing a bicycle. He was convicted of residential burglary, which is breaking into someone's house. And that's what he did, and that's what he was convicted of.
He broke into somebody's garage and stole a bicycle. That's what he did.
In California, an attached garage is part of the house.
If you look at some of the specifics of Bell's background, I mean, the first strike was a residential burglary in 1984. He was 19.
Stole a gun, stole jewelry.
The second strike is almost comical. I mean, it's New Year's Eve, he's drunk, he wanders into somebody's house, walks by the bedroom, says, "Hey man, how you doing?" Then goes into another garage and steals a coat and a pair of gloves from a chauffeur. I mean, to me, this looks like somebody who's had too much to drink
and doesn't know exactly what he's doing. It's not clear that he intended to harm anybody here, quite the contrary.
What you have to remember is the defendant has been to prison, adult prison, 3 times. He went in 1984, he went in 1986, and he went in 1989.
And you think the public needs to be protected from Stephen Bell
Yes.
for the next 35 years?
The defendant has made his choices, and the law imposes the consequences.
But 2 of the original jurors who found Stephen Bell guilty couldn't swallow those consequences. They found Bell more pathetic than dangerous.
I think the consensus in the jury room was that the elevator didn't run to the top floor.
Joe Wilcox and Debbie Holland both liked the 3 strikes law when it was on the ballot.
I did vote for it, and it was to get violent criminals off the streets, not actually knowing that it meant 3 felonies, and it could be nonviolent crimes.
That's pretty much my understanding as well.
They found out the law also applied to Stephen Bell when the judge asked them to certify Bell's previous convictions from Nevada so he could be sentenced under the 3 strikes law. Realizing that Bell faced life in prison, they refused to do it, risking a night in jail for contempt of court.
For me, it's a moral issue. I mean, that's what I stood on. It's not the politics of it or whether it's the law or not. Morally, I'm opposed to sending a man to jail for life for stealing a $300 bike. And it's as simple and as complex as that.
I totally believe he should be punished. He was guilty. But this law is not a fair law.
All right. Judge Joseph O'Flaherty didn't throw them in jail, but he did throw them off the jury. He's yet to formally sentence Bell and can't discuss specifics of the case or what he might do. But he doesn't like the law any better than the 2 jurors do.
First of all, it's unjust. It's horribly cost ineffective. We're filling our prisons with these petty criminals. It's not what the voters approved.
Judge O'Flaherty says the problem with the law is that it focuses entirely on someone's record and not on the seriousness of the current offense. But as long as judges and prosecutors have to run for election, they're not going to ignore public sentiment.
3 strikes got overwhelming support when it was enacted. Any politician would risk suicide by even talking about it, by even questioning it. It's the classic sacred cow.
Last year, the California legislature passed a bill to study the 3 strikes law to see if it's fair and to see if it's actually accomplishing what Californians wanted. It was vetoed by Governor Davis.
Why not at least take a look at it and study it to see if it's successful and see if it's fair?
Because I think you have to stay the course. All the evidence I've seen is that this law is working.
What are you going to do when you get out, or if you get out?
We will be moving.